everyone, and welcome to episode 504 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. I was excited to talk about boring things like new set release, but Wizards with the last minute, literally 1 minute before we started recording announcement. I'm excited.
Yeah, somehow last week was like wild with the Commander ban announcements, and I feel like this week is even more impactful somehow, which is kind of insane. But we'll get to that in a minute. We got another host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. How are you today?
Pretty good. Currently just sitting in a 1 hour long wait time for the secret lair.
Oh yes, it's secret lair day. Are you gonna get the hatchet, Krim? Did you see the the hatchet secret lair drop, which is apparently a joke?
If I somehow miraculously got shipped a hatchet, yes, I would love that. But unlikely that is for sale.
Oh yeah, so secret lairs going up, but that's not the big topic for today. We're actually trying to figure out what to talk about. We got Duskmourn new set release, we got bannings in Modern a month ago. What's the format looking like? But then, just a minute ago, like literally a couple minutes ago as we're recording this, Wizards posted a huge announcement, an article titled On the Future of Commander, which kind of references what's happened in the last week since the bannings and announced a huge change for the format. But before we get into that, we got a sponsor today, and our show today is brought to you by Card Conduit. And Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them with Card Conduit. You can use their curated service where you send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. Either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic. And let's start with the breaking news. On the future of Commander, Richard, they just posted this article. What's it say? Give us a TLDR of this article.
All right. And I quote, "We are announcing that the rules committee is giving management of the Commander format to the game design team of Wizards of the Coast." End quote. So the article basically says Wizards is taking over the RC's role. It's important to note there's some special things in here. So one, that the RC is in agreement with it, right? So they're not going to try to split the format or, battle Wizards with it. Somehow in the last week, they all got in a dark room and handed over the format over to Wizards of the Coast. And then if you go further in the article, there's a couple things here. So one, Wizards cites that this is due to the safety and well-being of the RC in response to kind of the ridiculous, crazy behavior last week, the death threats, the harassment, and all of that of the RC. Gameplay-wise, they mentioned providing additional guidance for deck power level. And then they're proposing to break the format into 4 brackets where your deck's power is going to be dictated by cards in the highest brackets. I think this is, if I read behind the lines here, they're going all in Rule 0, right? This is to further facilitate a Rule 0 talk, right? So that they don't have to ban cards, right? Like that is my reading in between the lines here, but they've loosely stated that they're going to provide more guidance for 4 power brackets. And then the important thing, which I think people are looking for, is no unbannings. We're evaluating the current ban list alongside with the Commander Rules Committee and the community. We will not ban additional cards as part of this evaluation. While discussion of the ban list started this, immediate changes to the list are not our priority. So no additional bannings, no unbannings, and more Rule 0. I think that's my takeaway from this. They're just not going to touch this ever again and rely on Rule 0 to fix the format. What does this mean, Seth, for the Jewel Lotus copiumers? What is CDH? Is CDH in here? Presumably it's in here somewhere, but no explicit mention of CDH in this format, in this discussion. And then also importantly, the rules committee on Twitter confirmed their support of this announcement, right? So this is not just Wizards making that up. The rules committee's actually stated they support this.
There's no civil war happening. This isn't
civil
a
war.
situation where the RC is gonna like whatever tell WotC to forget about it. They're gonna still do their own thing. No, everyone's going along with this. It seems like, wow, this is a lot to take in. I mentioned last week that I thought that people who were wishing for Wizards to take over maybe didn't know what they were wishing for when it comes to how WotC manages formats and ban lists, and the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And even though everyone was super mad at the RC for banning Jewel Lotus and Mana Crypt, having WotC in charge isn't necessarily going to be better, and I still feel that way. I'm not sure I feel like having Wizards in charge is in the best interest of Commander in the long term. All the harassment and the death threats, obviously horrible. That stuff is across the line. There's no way anyone should have been doing that. I don't know. Do you think this change is actually brought about by the goodness of Wizards' heart to defend the RC from online harassment? Or do you think that's a convenient reason for Wizards to do what they've perhaps wanted to do all along, or at least since the RC banned cards that they presumably didn't want banned, and take over the format? Like, what do you make of the motivation here?
I mean, is there I guess, like, why wouldn't they have just done it sooner if they wanted to take it over, right? They could have just always taken it back. I feel like there's not much stopping them from doing it. So I do believe that there is a good chance that, like, it looks bad that also, like, a group that is not Wizards is running this most popular format of your game. So I don't know. I think they should have done it a long time ago. I don't know why. It took them this long, but I'm glad that they're doing it now because the death threats, all of that stuff is super annoying. I don't know. I have this idea that I think the wrong demographic and wrong crowd will think they got a W today. Like, we were mean enough, and so because we were like throwing tantrums, now we got what we wanted and we made them step down and stuff like that. I hate that. I absolutely hate that because I think that this sends the wrong message. I don't know. That's just me. That I think that this looks weird in the optics a little bit, but.
So as a parent, I totally understand that. You're like, this behavior is terrible. Should we reward this behavior by, doing this? So in that sense, like that, I agree with Krim, right? I think the wrong group will take it as a win. But I do agree that Wizards has been wanting to do this whole time. And the reason they couldn't is because if everything was like happy cheery and they did this, people would be very mad at Wizards, right? Like, oh, everything is going fine. Like, why are you doing this? Corporate greed. This is disgusting, right? And they would, rebel back or whatever, right? It would be a big controversy. So now that everything's on fire, Wizards can step in as the hero. Now, did they do it for the RC safety? I don't think was their priority, although I do think they took it seriously, right? And they wanted to help, but this just like furthered their agenda while also helping, right? So it's kind of like a win-win in that respect, right? But they probably would have done something else if they didn't want to take over the RC, right? But in this case, they can take over the RC and then put the RC back into the shadows for their safety, right? So I think that's a win. And I've been a proponent of Wizards taking over the format for like years at this point, right? Before all this controversy, before all the stirring, because like it or not, Wizards is in the driver's seat, right? Wizards is driving your format. They print like 1 million Commander products a year. They are shaping the format. But there's this other part of it that's either not doing anything or doing things that are not part of the plan and like kind of messing with it, right? So you're not getting what Wizards is envisioning. So you might as well just go all in, right? Like we're already all in on Wizards anyway. You might as well have them actually be able to execute their vision rather than wonder if like, they're trying to do it, but like, this other group is meddling with it or whatever, right? So I like this change. I'm not as afraid as Seth.
But isn't
right?
their vision not to do anything? Like if you read this article, it sounds like their solution is just like, we're going to rule zero even better. You know that 1 to 10 power scale that everyone tries to rank their decks on and always ends up at a 7? We're going to do that, but with only 4 brackets this time. And it's going to work out really great, and the format's going to be so much better. Like, isn't this doubling down on doing nothing? Like, just, I know this is like very early. We don't see all the like the details of this, but
I mean, if we talk about the 4 power levels, I think I forgot if we agreed on it. We definitely discussed it on the Clash podcast. Like 10 power levels is too much. In reality, you really do have 4, which is CDH.
Yeah.
Right. And then you remove CDH, you have 3 levels: normal, high powered, and complete jank. Like essentially, that's what everyone breaks their deck into. So I understand the 4 brackets. I understand the unwillingness to randomly shake up the format. If it's a casual format, there's no need to, constantly ban and unban things and cause confusion in the player base. And if every time this happens, this past week is the result, maybe it is better for the game if we do nothing, right? Like at my LGS, I was just talking to random people. Most people were mad at the changes. Now, I don't know if it's because they got affected by, reading Reddit threads or whatever, right? But people are just like, I got Jewel Lotus, yo, right? Festival in the Box. I know people that just bought Festival in the Box, opened a Mana Crypt. They're like, wow. I mean, it's still not nothing, but, it's like half the price. I feel bad, right? Like, so is it worth it in the long run? Like, that's for Wizards and the suits to figure out, right? Like, so presumably they have modeled this, they have thought about this, they have specialists thinking about this, right? And they've determined that this is the best course, right? And we've trusted WotC for 30 years or whatever. I don't know, like, what's a little more trust, guys, right? Like, I don't know, right? Like, why is it all of a sudden we can't trust them anymore, right? Like, I don't know, so...
But the other side, Richard. But the other side is, Richard, yes, maybe there's all these super smart people that are, full-time working to design the best Commander format possible, and they have this great scheme. Or Wizards was upset that they can't sell Jewel Lotus and Mana Crypt anymore, and they're like, well, screw you, RC. We're selling our Jewel Lotuses and Mana Crypts, and we can't let this happen again because we need our reprint equity. And they just took over the format. And that's actually, the RC mentioned a week ago that they were working with Wizards on some future tools to improve Rule Zero or whatever, which I assume is what we're getting an early look at here with the bracket thing. So I don't know, maybe I'm just too cynical or whatever, but it's hard for me to see Wizards doing it because they have the best interest of Commander gameplay in heart and not the best interest of their shareholders in heart. Maybe those two things align in this case, but
it's like when people blame Hasbro. And then I remember I was looking at an article with you, Seth, and I'm like, did Hasbro take over WotC in 2001 or something, right? Like literally 25 years ago. And Seth's like, yeah. And I'm like, why do people keep complaining about Hasbro if Hasbro has owned WotC?
It's true
for
most of Magic
decades.
Yeah,
right. It's just some random scapegoat that people choose. If Wizards has made Commander the best format it has been for the past 10, 15 years or whatever, right? Like, why can't we trust that they will keep doing it?
But
right? And the interesting take here is they didn't hire the RC.
That's
right?
true.
Like if they felt like the RC was actually what the format needed, and they just wanted to take over it, right? Then they would fork over the cash, right? Like, whatever you need, I'm buying you out, right? Like, I'm gonna pay 2x your full-time job, come because we need you for the sake of the format, But they're like, yeah, game design can do it, right? Thank you for your service, right? So that's one interesting takeaway here, that they didn't take the RC or the CAG. The CAG is not mentioned here. I don't know what exactly the state of the CAG is. But yeah, that's an interesting thing, because I would have expected them to at least take some members or something as like a gesture of goodwill, or try to keep everything well with the community, but they didn't feel they need to, or they didn't want to, or I don't know what the story is. Maybe RC was like, nah, we've had enough designing stuff for Wizards. I'm out of here, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, we don't really know the details on that end. What do you think about all this, Crib?
I guess I have a question. This is a little bit of it's in relation to the mention of the CAG. You saw JLK step down, right? You saw, I believe, a few, like, how many?
I think two.
Total?
I think Kristen was the other one.
Kristen.
Yeah.
Kristen. Okay. Two. Okay. So we've seen 2 people step down. Was this Wizards doing this because those two stepped down? Was this already in motion as they were stepping down? Like, is this why they stepped down? I'm curious what you think about that, because like, this is just now. I'm wondering, was this was this plan in motion when the bannings went live and they saw the reactions?
Josh
boy.
Kwai like quit like almost instantly, right? Like same day or like within hours. So I feel that was more either in response to the news or in response to the harassment, right? I feel that's too quick for them to sit down and be like, "Yo, Wizards taking over all of this," and like, actually, I disagree. I'm leaving. Kristen was more like midweek, so that plausibly would have had time, but logically, if I was doing some volunteer stuff and just getting harassed into the ground, like I would just quit. So I feel it was more the harassment than some kind of protest against WotC taking over. And if anything, I would just wait for them to take over and then strongly state my opinion. Now I quit because Wizards is taking over the format to kind of declare that, right? So
Yeah.
If
I
anything,
don't think it's that, but who knows?
Yeah, if anything, the other element of it, I think, was all the stuff about the RC not really communicating with the KEG about this, or the KEG not feeling involved. I watched the Game Night podcast where they kind of talked about all this, and I think that was like potentially hurtful for some of the KEG members to like not feel in the loop or feel like they got to advise in this. So I think that might be another layer on top of everything else why someone might quit. So I think it's a combination of the harassment and how the actual bannings happened. I don't think it has anything to do with this, though. I would be surprised if it had anything to do with this, but I guess we don't really know for sure. What do you think, Krim, of their plan here? And I know this, they said it's like an open beta, so this isn't the final plan, but what do you think of the idea of having 4 brackets and essentially, from how it sounds like, you give each card a score, and if you have a card that's scored a 4 in your deck, then your deck's going to be a 4 because you have a 4. And if you wanted to play a deck that has, I think the example they use is an Ancient Tomb as a 4 bracket card. If you want to play that against people that are playing 2s, you do the Rule Zero conversation and be like, my deck's a 4 because I have an Ancient Tomb, but it's really a 2 without it. Is it okay if we play? Do you think this actually is going to make the Rule Zero conversation any easier? To me, it almost seems more convoluted.
I think this is going to be more like, it's going to be a lot more discussion, but I feel that this might be better overall for like the gameplay, because now you have to be really mindful of what cards you put in your deck, or else, example, like you had mentioned, this is a 2, but it's considered a 10 or something because I play 1 Ancient Tomb, right? So if you were accounting for your best card in your deck, the only, like, I like the idea, right? The idea of doing this. But the problem is, so now when I go into this game and I am new or returning or whatever, do I have to look at a list of every card ranked? That's the one. This is the nightmare that I'm thinking.
Cards.
The way it sounds, because it's not
what they're
as clear.
You know what
right
they're really
now,
gonna do?
That's what they're proposing, right? They're gonna put, instead of a ban list, they're gonna have a list that says Ancient Tomb is a 4 rather than banned or not banned, right? Which is not ideal, but it's better than the fake list we all have in our head today that says Armageddon is a 4, but Stasis is a 4, but Nadu is a 3 question mark. Like, there's this list that exists in our head, which is what we want explicitly banned or not banned, right? Like, that's the thing we've argued for. Instead, Wizards will just come out and give us a number for them, which is close, right? So I guess not ideal, but an improvement that they formalized this, saying that Ancient Tomb is considered fast mana.
I personally like this, as we are okay. So I enjoy this as a player that plays a lot of Commander, lot of Magic, all the time, every week. Right? I think that is perfect. We don't have to deal with this. Ooh, awkward. I have an Armageddon in my deck or whatever. Right? But I think that anybody that isn't us is going to be very overwhelmed if they have to look even at, let's just account for all the staples. if they have to look at all the staples and see what these cards are graded at, that's already a lot of work. But then you start getting into your history of the game. Like, do you think Wizards has, in this case, like, where does Bedlam or Spreading Plague fall into this, right? Are they
5.
going to go and individually 5? Well, okay. I don't know what that means. Is that good or bad? But the main thing is, are they going to go back and even do the random jank cards? Like, you've got Watsy intern number 1 is like, all right, dude, you got to work through Ease of commons back in 2001.
They have Gatherer. Theoretically, it'd be cool if you like, I want to use this card. Let me look it up, right? And then they actually have a rank. But in reality, they'll probably just use the signpost cards, right? Like, you know, they probably won't get every Armageddon variety, but they'll put Armageddon in 4. And if your card looks like Armageddon, you know, you should probably think about it. Which is pretty much all they can do, right? You think they can do every card?
Here's what they're gonna do. Here's what I think they will do. I actually think the technical aspect of this like is not that much of a concern, because I think what they will end up with is just some sort of website where you just like put in your deck list and it's just gonna spit all that out. Like you put in your deck list, maybe it's some AI thing, maybe it's like something they got an EDH rec where it like grades your deck and tells you what all your cards are. I think it'll be something like that where you just put in your deck list and it's gonna pop out your, you know, whatever, you're in bracket number 3. Here's your cards that are 3s. Here's your cards that are 4s. So I think the technical aspect should be easy,
way
right?
too much credit.
No,
I mean, they're totally not doing this.
You don't think so? You think you're just gonna have to muddle through it on your own? If you have to muddle through it on your own,
you're gonna get a list, and if you're lucky, deck editors will incorporate it. But no one will take this seriously. Like no one will care. Like I think we're making the reality is you're still gonna play your random deck, and then when someone salty at the table is like, "Yo, why are you playing Armageddon, dude?" Right? Someone will point you to the list, and then you look at the list, you're like, "Oh yeah, it's a 4," and that'll be it, right? And then maybe you take it out, but the games will all be the same still. Like no one is running their deck through some power level calculator or something beforehand, because it ultimately doesn't matter, right? Like if you take a very harsh deck, but the person doesn't know how to play it, it's like kind of useless, right? Like they're not going to do anything, right?
Yeah.
You take some jank deck with like some terrible 5-card stacks combo and you get like a good person playing it, you're getting stacks on every game, right? So like ultimately it doesn't matter too much. It's just some additional data, but at the end of the day, it's going to, I hate it, I'm using the word, it's going to come down to your play group and like what actually transpires during the game, right? And then at least now you have something to read, right? You're like, are you sure Armageddon is salty? I don't think it's salty. You're like, look at this list by Wizards. They put it in the 4 bracket. It's clearly salty, right? Now we can decide if we want to play with it or not, right?
The thing is though, like,
isn't that good?
Yeah, that's
right?
good, right?
That's good. That's a net positive, right? Because now things are...
It's better than what we have today, which is like, well, read 1,800 Reddit posts about whether Armageddon is acceptable or not in your play group, right? Because the ban list says nothing about it, right? Yeah. So that's better, right?
Or you could just ban Armageddon. That would be super clean and easy. But the problem I have with this, like, I don't think it works in practice, though. Because, like, so here, I go to a Magic Con. I'm playing a Commander Clash deck that has an Ancient Tomb in it. I'm a 4. I go sit down with all the CDH players, and I just get my head handed to me every single game. Like, my 4, because I have a single Ancient Tomb, is not a 4 where everyone's playing a whole bunch of 4s in their deck. My 4 is really probably more of a 2, but what if I have 2 of those cards? How does that, like, I feel like this just doesn't actually solve the problem, and it makes it super complicated. Because if you are a 4 because you play a single card that's a 4 in your deck, that's not the same as a 4 that has 50 4s in their deck. Like, there's...
Wouldn't that then give you
it is weird, right? You take a crap deck and then you're like, wow, I put 1 Soul Ring in. Am I a 4 now?
I'm a 4 now. No. Come on, CDH, let's do it.
But isn't that now going to give you the incentive to take the 1 card that makes your deck a 4? Like you're assuming that like all of a sudden I'm going to be okay with just going to a CDH table. But if this 1 card is a 4, I'm just going to take it out.
But Krim, the other complicated aspect of this is remember when we got the leak of all the brawl rankings and how amazingly bad they were and how none of them made any sense with the intern
rankings
for Arena, when we got like the leak of how Wizards scored all the cards, which put you in the Hell queue and Brawl. And that list was so illogical and no one could make any sense of it because it like just didn't make any sense. Like, aren't we going to the same situation where we have this weird list created by some intern at WotC that may or may not be reliable, judging all the power levels, and then like I don't know, it didn't really work well on Arena.
Shots fired. I'm sorry if you intern at Wizards of the Coast.
We love you.
Yeah. By the way,
That's a punching bag.
Interns at WotC, you're doing great. All right, but the main thing is, I think. Wait. So why would they hand off their cash cow? Their bread and butter, the one thing that has rocketed them into an absurd level of mainstream success. They're not going to give that to person number one, right? Like this person is definitely named and titled in the credits list. This person has got to have a few accolades attached to their name. So I don't think they're going to let just any person run this list. I can understand that with Brawl, because Brawl is like this, it's a digital only, right? Almost digital only. So I don't think that's going to happen.
I just don't know if there's going to be agreement on it. Even just looking at their 4 examples of 4s, it's Ancient Tomb, Grim Monolith, Armageddon, Vampiric Tutor. Vampiric Tutor is a card I see a lot of people just randomly play in their casual decks. Like Armageddon, sure. Grim Monolith, sure. Ancient Tomb, I guess. But Vampiric Tutor, that's a card that I think a lot of people don't think of as a 4 necessarily. So I just think there's not going to be any agreement on what the numbers mean. Like there's going to be someone that's saying Vampiric Tutor is a 4, but does that really mean it's a 4 and everyone's going to agree with that scoring? I don't know if they necessarily will.
Whether or not they agree, that's going to be like their own thing, right? Like, because I think first off, as you move into this, one minor thing is I think that you can Wizards have tons of people come in, right? Because like just come in and look at the cards. Like everybody should be looking at these cards. Have people like, I don't know, like JLK or something come in, help like break down the grades. Just people that play Commander all the time. That'll at least help smooth it over so it's not on one person, right? Second off, I don't think anyone at any point, no matter how well this is executed, everyone will agree. Because as you've seen, somebody will rank a simple counterspell as a 5, right? Like the counterspell is 5, but like check this absurd, I don't know, open the way out. This is a 1, right? So I think there's no way you're going to make everyone happy. You kind of just really have your best game designers and like all the people just work on this and coming down, like figuring out how to like actually make this work. And then whatever happens after, that's that, right? We no longer have to deal with the random stuff in the wild. Like, bro, what the hell? Counterspell? Sorry, dude, that's a 1.
No, but that you can't use that defense though, right? If people don't agree with it, like if the person's getting salty, they're getting salty. Like some list from Wizards is not going to change the emotion someone feels when they're playing a game of Magic.
So,
well,
no list that will.
But for in the wild, I can at least tap to the sign, right? Like that's just the main thing here. It's like what you asked for. It's what you've asked for, Seth. I wish they would just make everything streamlined and consistent, and they are.
I wish that they would just ban the cards they don't want people to play. There's a difference.
So you'll never get agreement amongst everyone, right? It's like, what is the best color, orange or purple? There is no real answer to that, right? But Wizards can decide they want to be an orange company and make everything orange, and they are an orange company now. Right? So like that is the difference, right? Although like is purple better or orange better? I don't know, right? And over time, all the people like orange will come play with Wizards, right? All the people like purple will go to another game. So and you see this in Wizards, like you guys talk about counterspell. We know counterspells are highly unpopular. They keep trying to like not print good counterspells, right? And they print bad ones to kind of appease the Crims of the world, but in general, they feel counterspell
because they couldn't be bad.
They feel counterspell does not add to the right play experience, right? Because you can say get good, but the person on the other side of the counterspell feels bad, right? And when you sit down to play a game, you don't want to feel bad, right? So they have removed all these cards over time. Like, land destruction is an easy one. Like they're like so bad, like in terms of like efficiency and like how strong they are in 2024, because if they're good, it leads to a terrible gameplay experience. Now, you can argue that's the wrong move. Everyone should sit around with no lands, resolving no spells, and we hit each other with 1/1s to finish the game, right? But Wizards have decided that is not the play experience they wanted. And if you wanted that experience, I'm sure you could find another TCG somewhere where the pacing is more similar to that, right? And that's the point, right? Now that they have complete control, they can facilitate the game that they want. And if that's the game you don't want, you go somewhere else. So, for example, their current thought is shove product down everyone's face, right? Have like 1 million new commanders, power creep everything. If in the long run you don't like that, you go play a different game, right? And the people that do like that kind of, I don't know, like, like rush like every single like 2 weeks as new spoilers come out, like it, they gravitate towards the game, right? So it's all about curating the experience they want. This list will help them do it. But you'll never get agreement on this list. Like, we can't even agree whether counterspell's a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1, right? We can't agree whether Armageddon is doable or not, right? So, but we don't need to agree, right? Like, Wizards will decide, and then we decide if we like their game or not, right? If every game came down to an Armageddon, would that get more people to play or less people to play, right? And that's for Wizards to decide, and we trust in Hasbro, I guess that's what we gotta do, right?
Oh, I have played way too much Modern, way too much Pioneer to trust WotC with ban lists and stuff. I just can't. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it.
It's not a real format. It's not a real format.
Not a real format.
Oh.
Yo, you and your timeless paper timeless decks, okay?
I just feel bad because I feel like the RC's incentive is to make Commander as good as possible, and Wizards' incentive is to make as much money as possible. I think I mentioned that last week, and that just that scares me because I think we're all kind of have felt like since Wizards has started focusing so much on Commander, the format's gotten worse, right? I don't know if any of us would say we disagree with that. And this is just an even bigger, more focus, which, if it keeps going in that same trajectory, isn't that like a negative rather than a positive?
Worse for us, Seth, but more people than ever are playing Magic the Gathering than ever. So what does that mean? Is it actually worse?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
right?
that's a fair
now
point.
Magic is mainstream, right? I can go to an LGS, play Magic anywhere. I can go down the street. I can tell people I play Magic the Gathering. They won't laugh me into a corner, right? Yeah, so maybe the gameplay is worse, but is it actually worse? I don't know, right? If more and more people are playing, if I can share Lord of the Rings with my buddy, is it actually worse? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. That's true. Maybe it's one of those things where just like the old, kind of like we've seen in other formats, like in Modern, where the old timers are going to fall off and stop playing it because it's not what they want out of Modern. But then it'll keep going with new people who do Modern Horizons 3 block constructed or whatever that like that format. So maybe it'll work out in the end. One of the most interesting parts, last thing I got on this, they mentioned reevaluating the ban list. And I know we have talked many times about how the Commander ban list is really illogical. We've done whole Commander Clash podcasts just breaking down how bad this ban list is. 2 questions on this. One is, do you expect them to unban? Like, there's some stuff like Coalition Victory that I hear people bring up again and again and again, like this should be unbanned, this should be unbanned. Do you think they'll unban anything? Number 2, what do you do about your Jewel Lotuses and your Mana Crypts? Like, is there any thought on here with them saying, we're not going to ban more cards, but we're going to reevaluate this ban list? Do you think there's a chance they unban those cards during this evaluation? Or do you think that would just make people even more angry because they sold all their copies and now they're kind of stuck not being able to ever unban them because the wrath would be even greater? So what do you think about the ban list reevaluation?
Oh, okay. Well, I you know what? I'm happy for them to do any revaluations or whatever, right? That's fine. But they should not unban these cards. I would absolutely despise it if they unban these cards, because I really cannot have the wrong demographic just getting the W. And on top of that, gameplay. Legitimately. Like,
CDH
there's-
players. What if CDH
Sure.
players want this unbanned, right? So what if they unban it for bracket 4, whatever? They're like, CDH players, we heard you, reinstated. Is that so terrible?
I mean, I think CDH players are like should like totally have this, but is this where they not like? Do you think Magic just makes a CDH
You mean
I think,
Wizards
like
or
separate or
community?
sorry, yeah, Wizards
Who?
just makes CDH separate from this, like the 1, 2, and 3, 4, right? These 4 brackets, boom. Or maybe this will just be like, hey, bracket 4, you can play Jeweled Lotus.
I think this increases the odds of CDH becoming its own thing. I think Wizards, it has to be appealing for them, right? Because they have interest in tournament series and all of this stuff. Like having CDH be something that they could have a pro tour for or have big tournaments for has to be somewhat appealing to them. So I could see Wizards doing a CDH thing and a CDH ban list that's separate from this more casually focused announcement. I think it's possible.
Nah, too
I
much
mean-
work. Like, why would Wizards do it? And the community might try, but it is so difficult to make a new format. I can list to you the number of formats that came from the community that have actually taken off, and that is Pauper and Commander, right? And I can list with you like Frontier, Tiny Leaders, like, I don't know, there's like a million of these community formats that those are very successful, by the way, right? The fact that we can talk about them and mention their name means that they reached some level of success before dying. I think CDH players will not invent their format. Like, I don't see why you would invent a format just to include 3 cards back. Like, I don't see why you would do that. But again, like I said last podcast, you know, if there is the CDH tournament provider and they do all the tournaments and they decide this is best and all the top grinders go there, they can eventually make this organic. But it seems like a lot of work to ruffle feathers for no reason. And it would make it look more like people would be more upset about this announcement, right? If you found out that Wizards took over the RC simply to reverse the previous RC's decision, it's like kind of a bad look on Wizards, right? So I could see them unbanning Coalition Victory or whatever. I could see them actually making Secret Lair unbanned, where these 5 cards come off the Commander ban list, and here are shiny new versions of them, right? But I can't see them doing Jewel Lotus. I can't see them doing Jewel Lotus. I can see some figurehead in the community try to split CDH off, and then that might cause some spikes in prices and stuff like that. But I would think it ultimately would die down, because why would you carry around the CDH deck and then go to your LGS and hope that someone's playing CDH 2.0 and not, you know, Wizard CDH, right? And like it seems like a chicken egg problem, right? Like, why invest in this? Especially since your deck probably looks totally different. It's not like you take your deck and just put these 3 cards in, right? Like your deck is no longer Rogue Sai or whatever, right? So you just take all these cards out, right? So yeah, it's rough, but I wouldn't be coping on these cards. I'd get rid of them personally, but not financial advice. Do whatever you want to do.
I think Wizards ends up unbanning them. I think my theory is
Really?
what this is really all about is that Wizards just really is upset that they banned cards that were really expensive and really good at selling packs, and they took over the RC, and then like 6 months from now, once they finish their evaluation, but it won't just be we unban those 2 cards. It'll be we went through the whole Commander ban list, Coalition Victory, this, and Mana Crypt, and this, and Jewel Lotus are off the ban list. That's my expectation. Not financial
They
advice.
could
It could
make a
not
new
happen.
dock
but-
side. Just make it white. If you control less treasures
Just
than
make
someone
it
else, right?
That's
like,
always-
like I don't buy for a second, because they can print a new Jewel Lotus or a new dockside tomorrow, like super easy. They don't need to, you know, unban these and have these legal anymore, right? Like, it is so easy to make a new dockside. So
Yeah, how do you make a new Jeweled Lotus though? That's like a Black Lotus callback. Like, how do you even do that? That's like similar power level. Like,
One mana, it adds 4.
Alright.
Wow.
It's called Mega Lotus. It's
Make-
called Mega
Big-
Lotus. Okay.
yeah.
Ley Line of the Lotus. If it's in your opening hand, you play it for free. Sack it. Add 3 mana. It's a Black Lotus, but it's a ley line. Done. Thank you. Collecting royalties right now.
Maybe they should have just hired Richard to implement these changes. All right. Any other thoughts on Commander stuff before? Wow, we almost used the whole cast on this. Before we hit up a couple other topics real quick. Any other thoughts on the big news? All right, so let's move on. Lost in all this banning talk, we got a new set release last week. Duskmourn is out. Duskmourn is shaking up standard, showing up in other formats. So I want to know first impressions of Duskmourn. I know, Krim, you've been playing some standard. I've been playing a lot of standard. Richard, have you been playing standard? And you've been drafting quite a bit. Have you been doing any standard or no?
So last week, as soon as Magic Arena went live, Seth, I brewed together the greatest mono white mid-range deck you've ever seen. But I needed some Overlord of the Hotwoods, or no, Overlord of the whatever, the white Overlord.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have 10k gold. Let me fire up a draft to see if I can mythic draft this bad boy out. I've like gone infinite drafting. I've made it from bronze. I'm about to hit diamond. I still have 2 drafts in the bank. I might be able to make it to Mythic, Seth, on 10k gold. And spoiler alert, I've opened one of the card I needed.
Hey,
one.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
You're there.
I still need 3. But I've somehow turned into a mythic, not a mythic, a limited grinder, trying to make it to my mythic rating. Have not played standard yet though. Although,
how have you enjoyed it? Like, is it a fun format? I haven't done a draft yet. Like, I know some sets recently have been a little mixed reviews. How is this one so far for you? You like it?
So I haven't played limited in a couple sets, but my guess is this will go down as one of the best limited formats of all time. It's very
wow.
There's a lot of viable archetypes. There's a lot of viable colors. It has everything that everyone typically likes, like a lot of removal, a lot of combos, okay, so here I'm gonna give you guys the sappy Magic story. I haven't had so much fun finding cute little synergies in Magic in like so long, where I'm like, I draft 2 cards and then I play them and they turn out to be this funny combo. I'll give you the best one. So my curve was 2 mana Room that gives attacking creatures +1/+0. My opponent blanks. My 3 drop is a 3 mana 2/4. When it attacks, it gives a creature +1/+0 indestructible. They play some dirtily creature. My 4 drop is the 3 mana 4/2 haster that must be blocked if possible. So now every turn I'm hitting with a 5/2 indestructible that must be blocked. It basically blanks whatever my opponent plays, and then I just murder them, right? And then I use removal on any random like 2/2 that they play, and then I'm trading up 3 mana for 5 mana, 3 mana for 6 mana every turn, and like you just cheese your opponent out. And I'm like, I didn't even know this when I drafted it, but this is a cute combo, right? So, and there's a lot of these types of like synergies and combos in the format. So I genuinely think it'll be one of the best limited environments that in the history that you'll be looking for like Duskmourn boxes in the future to try to play Duskmourn limited.
I might.
Like, so we're talking about drafts to the joy levels of triple Innistrad, right? Like stuff like that.
Yeah. There's all, like, look, I got wrecked by Mind Skinner. Right? Like there's all these like cute sinner things that you can do. They're like Mind Skinner Tempo. You're like Mind Skinner and then counter spell. It's like, oh, I didn't have removal that turn, I'm dead. Right?
Dude, if you have Mind Skinner and limited, I feel like that's nuts. Like that's actually nuts. Like how do you?
But it's so bad if they just remove it with like 1 damage, right? But if you somehow untap with it, it's like insane, right? It's like a 3-turn clock essentially, and you can just back it up with tempo plays and counter magic. Right.
If they can remove it, deal 1 damage to it, whatever, but you spent this is a 3 mana win condition in limited, right? Like actual just win conditions. So I think it's okay. The upside's all there. I mean, I'm happy to hear the limited's good. Because I've also, read around online and it looks like I think this guy is pretty good at Magic LSV or something like that. That dude also says that this is a pretty sweet format, so lots of people are really enjoying it.
Richard was worried for
it was a trash format.
Worst format ever.
Okay. I can appeal to all boomers. There's Mana War in the format, right? There's a 3 mana bounce a creature manifest, so it's better than Mana War. At uncommon in blue, so Mana War is in the format, right? And Mana War usually makes for like the best limited formats. I don't know why. it just cheeses everyone out of a of a win. There's so many like cheese wins in this format too, where your opponent just nut draws you, you're dead no matter what happens, or like you blank on a play for one turn because there's Mana War, there's Unsummoned, that's a room, right? There's counter magic, there's tons of card draw, there's tons of like when this creature hits, draw a card, so you can snowball like your way to victory like so well. So it's basically every other format. You play a good, strong deck, and then you have like 20% of cheesing your opponent out to win.
so limited does sound sweet. I might have to try and draft it at some point. Krim, I gotta ask you about standard though. So my big question for you is overall, I really like this standard, and standard I think is still really fun to play, especially in best of 3. But I have seen in the last few days a lot of anger, especially from best of 1 players, about Leyline of Resonance. And you play best of 1 more than I do. I play on occasion, but I know you do a lot of like single scoops and stuff. How problematic is the red Leyline? That's just the one that doubles up all your pump spells and lets you kill on turn 2. And it has been, I've seen people calling it for it to be banned, saying they're quitting Arena over it. Like really, really huge reaction to this card in best of 1. Do you think it's a problem in best of 1?
It's damn powerful. It is very powerful. We're going to see how it goes, just because, again, one thing that I cannot reiterate enough is that we haven't had a red deck kick our teeth in for a long time. We actually made fun of it, right? Like, let's not lie here. It's like, what are you gonna play aggro? Yeah, right, lol. Right? Like that has the red aggro specifically has not been good for a long time. Hazaret red maybe is the last time, or whatever. But this card I want to keep an eye on, because at some games you could lose by like as early as turn 2, turn 3. I think somebody did the numbers. They ran it through. They just, out of boredom, they ran it through on how often it is you can win on just turn 2, assuming you're uninteracted with. And the fact that that could exist is concerning, right? So now I was wondering.
That number was 20%, by the way.
Yeah.
So 20%. If you played a tap land on turn 1, right? 20%,
the game like ended there, and you're not even accounting for the games where you're dealt like 16 damage. You're not technically dead, but you're like as good as dead, right? Like 20% of the time, you don't have interaction on turn 1. You're straight up just dead in standard. That sounds scarier than like modern or like that's what happens in those formats, right? Where if you don't have the right interaction, someone can just go off on you. So that's a little scary.
Best of 1 or best of 3. I mean, like, sometimes you just may not draw it, right? Like the answer to like dealing with this ley line, like post board, hopefully you can draw like, I don't know, pick your poisons or whatever. But like the fact that that is a possibility and it's 1 in 5 games, I think that is something to keep an eye on. As of right now, I haven't gotten tired of getting dumpstered by it yet. But like for me right now, it's just been like, ooh, the thrill. Like, ooh, am I dead? Let's see.
I've definitely,
the novelty might wear off.
Oh, I think it might. I've definitely seen clips of people posting on social media of them just like turn 1, play a surveil land, and then just die just with their death surveil land. I'm like, what are we even doing?
I mean, it just makes that surveil that much better, though.
Yeah, you gotta really.
Now you're really thinking about it.
That's your 1 game action. You better make it count.
This might be the most positive EV sounding grind to Mythic I've ever heard. Right? If you're like, most games end in 10 seconds, even if it's like a 30% win rate, you might actually just play it to get all the wins to like climb your way up.
And it's even better than
like,
that,
it's so
because the
fast.
decks essentially budget. Like the decks that do this are playing a ton of like just common and uncommon pump spells. Most of their creatures are common or uncommon. So it's a really accessible deck too for people to put together. What do you think about this, Grib? This is another question. I know we've been talking about splitting ban lists because of CDH and Commander and all that drama. What about just having best of 1 have its own ban list? Because I've been playing mostly best of 3. And I rarely run into Leyline of Resonance. And when I do, I don't really mind. It's so infrequent that even if I do die on turn 2, I'm like, oh, whatever, I won't sit again for another 10 matches. In best of 1, I've seen so many people be like, I've played this deck 7 out of 8 matches. I've played this 10 times in a row. I'm quitting Arena. Is there any argument that we should just have like a best of 1 ban list and a best of 3 ban list to let us handle stuff like this? That's like isn't really a problem for Pro Tour level paper best of 3 play, but it is really frustrating for those people who want to get into Arena and play some quick best of 1 matches and have, 20 minutes a day to play Magic, and their experience is just getting dumpstered again and again by Leyline. Like, do you think we should split
I
it
thought
off?
we
and
do
let
have
us-
this, Seth.
So they
Was
banned
it-
Nexus of Fate and
Nexus of Fate was banned in best of
That's
one.
been
right?
the only
Yeah.
time that we've had it happen. So it did happen once a few years ago, but they have never like actively maintained a best of 1 ban list and a best of 3 ban list.
One of two things. First off, do you know when you just like those moments in your life where you're just like, have you ever like had one too many alcoholic beverages, you black out, whatever? That's what it feels like. I don't remember what happened. Like it's like when, I got rolled so fast. How are you mad at the red player?
Yeah.
You blinked and you lost. Like,
At least
oh,
they had
it's
merciful.
really-
It's fast.
yeah. But in reality, should they do another ban list? I think they could. I think they could. I think this is definitely something that they could do. But I wonder, okay, the typical Magic player's deck building. Now, I'm not like you've heard us say just have the removal, et cetera, right? But I genuinely think that best of 1 is a different beast entirely. I know people will say that's not real Magic.
It is.
At a sideboard or whatever, right? Like the main thing here is if you play that format, it is a different format. And as someone who's played a lot of like Hearthstone and things like that, if you want to tech out against a certain deck in the one of 30 cards or whatever in a 30 card deck in Hearthstone, which is a best of 1 format, by the way, you kind of just throw it into the main deck. Your deck numbers are weird. You're not playing like a full play set of anything. You're playing 1s and 2s, right? Like lots of random 1s. So I took that deck building strategy into best of 1 Magic, and it's paid off. I know a lot of people laugh at me for playing a bunch of random singletons, but it's like you can tell it's not Commander, it's Hearthstone, okay, that I'm going off of. So I do want to, what I'm getting at is I do want to play a little bit more because it's so early, right? I want to just keep playing with the cards a little bit longer. I want to let them run this standard format, this exact iteration for at least another month or 2. I don't know. I don't know when Foundations is here. I think it's actually next month, but it doesn't matter. I think with Foundations as well, I'd really like to just let this play out. Now, if it goes into the
Technically,
what?
we don't have a standard panelist update till next August, so you probably don't really have much of a choice.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
I mean, we have emergency ban windows, but those are supposed to not really be for standard outside of big emergencies. So
This
we'll
is
see
an
how that shakes out.
emergency. I will say, so when I built my standard deck, it was best of 1. And you know what the reason was? I didn't want to spend 15 more mythic wildcards building a sideboard.
Yeah,
That's like the easiest reason, right? And you know what? I play all these other games where best of 1 is the norm. I'm conditioned to be okay with best of 1. What I don't like is mulling down to 4, finding a single card and then scooping, right? Like that's called playing Jund in Modern, right? Like that is the most miserable experience ever. You're like, well, where's the ley line? You're just mulling down, and if you can't get it within the first 3 shots, you cannot win the game. It seems like a miserable play pattern that you die 20% of the time with no interaction, right? Just due to variance. Like you could have all the interaction you want. You could play the crimiest deck you want. But what if all your lands are surveil lands? What if your interaction costs 2 or 3? What if you didn't see any? You die. That's where you put the frowny face when they ask if you had fun, right?
But
so
it's
I think they need to
it's
do
so
something
weird.
about it. They need to do
Because-
something about that. Like standard
But this
turn
deck
2
is
kills.
so glass
What?
cannon. It's so glass cannon though.
I
Like,
mean,
leg-
is it
And
really?
of course, you're gonna run up against it in your run to the top 8, right? You're like, wow, who actually made it here with this terrible deck? And that's all you see, and they destroy you. Does that make you feel any better, right?
I mean, if they manage to top 8,
I-
they've done an impossible feat because that deck is so inconsistent. Some games are just like, wow, what happened? I lost so fast. And then the other ones is just like, I answered their one thing and they lost.
Yeah, it can be
Boggles
very all in. That's true. I would say even
so all in.
even discounting Leyline of Resonance, I think that best of 1 is like important enough to Arena. And according to the data we get from Wizards, it's like very heavily played. Like a lot of old timers play best of 3 still, but for new players joining Arena, that's like the first place a lot of people go. I think it's just like a big enough of a format that it's probably deserving of its own ban list. Like if they don't want to ban cards regularly in paper standard because they want people to like feel safe to build a collection, slow down rotation, ban once a year, I think that is a reason that for best of one on Arena in specific, that they should just give it its own ban list. Even not counting this one ley line, but I think it would just be better for Arena players overall.
Called Alchemy, Seth. It just rebalances.
No.
They already have
So you can still use your cards.
Oh, no.
Everything makes sense. We just don't like it.
Yeah, you can up the cost of the ley line to like 10. Now it's 10 mana ley line. We fixed it. Oh, all right. Any other thoughts on anything before we wrap it up for today? I want to get into Modern. I don't think we have time because of the big Commander announcement, but at some point, maybe next week, we'll talk about the One Ring. 50% in X now. It has finally breached the threshold of being in half of Modern decks, which is very impressive. I guess let me ask you this. Do you think this Commander drama has any influence on stuff like that? Like, do you think One Ring is less likely to get banned based on how much Commander players freaked out about Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus?
I mean, this is all going to depend on how their new power system works.
I'm talking about
Right,
Commander.
like
Or I'm not talking about Commander. I'm talking about
Oh.
Modern here. Like, is the One Ring less likely to be banned in Modern because
Oh,
of
oh.
how much
Global riot
people
over-
have freaked out because of the bannings in Commander? Yeah.
I think people will be upset, but the main thing here is anybody that's playing Modern is going to be somebody who probably played through a few, standard
Yeah.
rotations and bans and stuff like that. So I feel like for the most part, it'll be people upset, but a healthier mindset and approach to the bannings overall. So yeah, I don't think it'll be anywhere near Commander because I have to imagine some of these Commanders players don't even know that bans could happen. So
Yeah. No, a harsh awakening last week.
It's okay because we know how bad the format is, right? Like, I think if you're a Modern player, you go to your LGS, the Modern event doesn't fire. You know that people are not buying into the format because of the One Ring. So you know it's a problem. So while eating for One Rings being banned sucks, you understand that it brings back like FNM Modern. Whereas
Yeah, you
Commander
play it again.
players saw everything was fine. Like, everything's fine. Like, why'd you go and ban? It's if Modern was the best format ever, thriving, healthy metagame, even though the One Ring is everywhere, everyone's playing it. Your Friday Night Magic is jam packed, and then they went and banned the One Ring, right? You're like, why did you do that? Everything was fine, right? That was the Commander reaction. I feel with Modern, you can be like, oh, Modern's on life support. Like, I can't get an event to fire. So maybe we should do something about it. So,
Yeah.
and then plus 60 card players are conditioned to this, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
think
they're
they're more
used to
used to
getting
that.
their 50 card Chase Mythic from Standard banned immediately because it's too OP. They had a play set of it. So going to 100 isn't that much of a stretch, even though it kind of is. But
You know what's a
and then
risk?
we also buy cards at pre-sale prices, right?
Yep.
Because you need to get them for your tournament this weekend. So I'm going to pay like 2x the markup. So 60 card players are more used to just money incinerating. So it's not as bad for them, as bad as that sounds.
yes,
I
we have
think
a much healthier approach. We just burn all. We knew the money was burnt. Right.
Like,
I mean-
you burnt the money on the hotel and the flight to O2 drop, it's,
Yeah.
what is the One Ring here or there, right? Like,
We've just all come to grips with Magic being a money sink for us, but we're fine with it because it's so much fun. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, no bannings till December in Modern anyway, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see because I think we probably are going to need another shake up there with the One Ring, and also Energy is up to like 30% of the meta in Modern. It's like really, really dominating, which kind of makes sense because we saw that on Arena and we saw the rebalancings on Arena, so it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But anyway, I think that brings us to the end of our podcast for today. Anything else on the way out the door? No fish mail this week. We'll get to it someday, I promise. Really, Richard, how do people send that in?
what was the last time we did fish mails?
That was like 2 months ago. It's coming.
I haven't
It's
taken
coming.
anything from the RC, Seth. We've set the expectation that we don't do fish mail. So when do we do next fish
No, we're gonna be in trouble. We're gonna be
catastrophe
in
is going to
trouble.
occur? Let's test out this theory. Send us questions at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And that brings us to the end of episode 504 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard Cribb, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have a lovely week, everyone. And this is the crew signing off.